Hey, and welcome to the Easy Graphics 101. In this specific video course, I'm going to show you how to edit graphics, and we're going to cover a lot of basic fundamentals so that you can create graphics, create banners, create headers, and so forth. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a lot of screen capture, so you're going to be able to look over my shoulder and follow me click by click. So with that said, let's go ahead and get started. This is video number one. It's the introduction to graphics editing, and before I move on, I want to talk about a quick overview so you have an idea of all the videos in the specific video, how they relate to each other, and knowing this, I know it'll help you implement this quicker and easier. First of all, this is video number one. Video number two, we're going to talk about how to download and how to install paint.net. And downloading and installing is easy, but how do you set it up and everything like that? Video number three, we're going to talk about understanding paint.net's features and tools. So we're going to go throughout the whole paint.net system in terms of the basic fundamentals, and I'll show you, how to use certain tools, what tools mean, and this and that. That way you have an idea of how everything works, and then you understand when we move on to video number four and so forth, how to actually use the system. Video number four, we're going to talk about catchy text, basically how to create catchy text for your headers, for your website or anything like that. And then we're going to talk about mirroring. If you're not familiar with mirroring, it's basically nowadays, especially in 2012 and so forth, we have something called Web 2.0. With Web 2.0, you'll notice that a lot of text is mirrored. So let's say, for example, you have a word that says hello, or a title that says Easy Graphics 101. And then you have a mirror effect, so you kind of see like a mirror effect for that text. And I'm going to show you how to do that, just because it makes it professional and interesting. Video number five, we're going to talk about catchy shapes, how to use shapes effectively in your images and so forth. Video number six, we're going to talk about how to remove the background of a picture. Let's say, for example, that you found a picture on a royalty-free site, and it's a picture of somebody that you want. However, you don't want the background. You want to put them on a white background, or you want to take that object, person, object, machine, whatever, or building or anything like that, any type of objects, you want to take them out of that background and put it into another background. I'll show you how to do it the quick and easy way. Video number seven, we're going to talk about layers. Layers are your friends. If you imagine, let's say you have like 10 sheets of clear, transparent plastic, and each of those pieces of plastic have some sort of image on them. So imagine you can change the layers, you can move objects around and so forth. So layers are your friends, and they make editing a lot easier. In fact, I would say out of all this video series, layers, if you can master layers and removing a picture from its background, then you pretty much can do a whole lot with layers. Video number eight, we're going to talk about plugins. Paint.net has plugins that can make your software more powerful if you choose to do so. You don't have to, but this is an option that you can take if you choose to do so. Video number nine, we're going to talk about banners and headers. How to make professional looking banners. How to make professional looking headers that you can add to your website. Banners that you can add to your website or you can use to market your products and this and that. So with that said, let's talk about the tools that you're going to need. You're going to need paint.net in this specific course, of course. Now, keep in mind that the concepts that I'm going to teach you, they can apply to just about any other tool. They can apply to Adobe Photoshop. They can apply to GIMP. Let's say, for example, that you want to use something like GIMP. It's not going to be the exact same layout, but it's going to be similar concepts. So you can use GIMP if you want to, but I personally use paint.net, and I'm going to use that for this specific course. Paint.net is free, and I found personally it to be better than GIMP, but some of you might want to try out GIMP and this and that. The last thing that you're going to need is you're going to need graphics. And in fact, in this video course, I'm going to use pictures that I personally got from bigstockphoto.com. Let's say you get a picture from bigstockphoto.com. If you were to use that picture and if it was not a royalty-free site, then you would have to pay, every product that you sold. Well, with a royalty-free picture site, you pay it once and that's it for that specific product. So with that said, let's move on to the second video, and I'm going to show you how to install and set up paint.net correctly so that you can properly begin to edit the graphics. Hey, and welcome to video number 2. In this specific video, we're going to talk about how to download and install paint.net and how to set it up properly so you can begin to use it. So with that said, let's go ahead and get started. To get to the site, you want to go to Google and type in paint.net, which is located, the site is located at getpaint.net. So I'm going to go here, and then simply at the top, click on the download link. Now, the reason why I wanted to create this video is so that you understand that you can install paint.net. Some of you, when you install paint.net, it's going to be a simple, seamless, no problem installation. But some of you, when you install paint.net and you do not have the Microsoft .NET framework, if you do not have it, then either paint.net will prompt you or you can try downloading it yourself. So that's something that I want to make sure that you understand. It's not a hard process. It's just something that you need to be aware of, and that paint.net, of course, only works with Windows. And one computer, like the computer that I'm working on right now, I install paint.net with no problem at all. And to do that, just simply click on download now here, and then click on this link up here. It's a zip file. And once you unzip the file, it's going to appear here. And all you have to do is double click it and just follow the directions to doing so. And so if you do not have .NET, like say for example my other desktop, my desktop did not have the .NET framework, and then therefore I installed it, and then paint.net said no, you need the .NET framework, and it's this link here. And it's very, very easy to install. In fact, it sends you to the download page here. All you have to do is click download, follow the directions to get the .NET framework to get it installed. Once you're done with that, and let's say that you've had success on the installation, and now it's time to open paint.net. So to access it, you can either find the link or the icon on your desktop and so forth, or you can open, let's say, click on the start button here and then click in the search area, paint. And if you successfully installed it, then you'll see paint.net right here. And when you click on that, I've already opened it up here, but this is what paint.net looks like. I preferably like paint.net more than I do GIMP. But if you have a Macintosh, then GIMP is the way to go. But in this specific video course, and pretty much Adobe Photoshop, GIMP, all these different programs are very similar. Like if I'm looking at these tools right here, the same tools that are being used here, a lot of them are being used in Adobe Photoshop. However, with Adobe Photoshop, you don't need all the bells and whistles to create basic stuff. So this is what paint.net looks like, and in the next video I'm going to go give you a deeper course and a deeper dive through exactly on all the features, all the tools, and at least the fundamental tools that you're going to need. Hey, and welcome to video number 3. We're going to talk about understanding paint.net's features and tools so that you can get fully acquainted with how paint.net works, what kind of features that they offer, so that you can dive in with video number 4 to 9. Just gets easier and easier from that point. So with that said, let's go ahead and get started. Before I move into this area here, I want to talk about the links at the top. So this is pretty self-explanatory, you know, save file and so forth, and editing is pretty self-explanatory. But when we move into the view section, this allows you to zoom in and out, and of course there are shortcut keys. I prefer to use the shortcut keys to zoom in and out. You can see the actual size. Let's say you're zoomed in and you want to see the actual size, you can do that. What I try to do is, when I use paint.net, is to turn this option on, the rollers, because this will give you an idea of how big your picture is and how big your header is. Let's say you want your banner to be 486 by, let's say, 68 pixels, and you're going to need to be 4 over here. So the ruler really helps. So when I get started, I try to turn the ruler on. And you can change the measurements between pixels, inches, and centimeters, but by graphics, usually graphics are measured by pixels. So I just keep it at pixels by default. Under the image section, you can crop to selection, but this will only appear if you have an image. So if you want to have an image and you want to crop it, then you can do that. So let's say, for example, that I make this black and I want to, let's say, crop the selection. So I would just click on this. Let's say that I just want that little itty bitty rectangle. Then I just click on image, crop the selection. What that does is it just takes out everything and it removes everything but it removes everything but that little area that I selected. But I just wanted to show you that. Resize is, of course, resizing the image. Canvas size is, of course, the whole canvas. If I want to flip the image horizontally, I can do that here. I can do that vertically. I can rotate it clockwise, counterclockwise. I can rotate it 180 degrees, and so forth. And you can flatten. Flatten means that, let's say you have layers. You have 10 layers on top of each other, and you just want to turn all those 10 layers into one image. You can do that by flattening it. And under layers, this gives you the ability to add a new layer, to duplicate a layer. Let's say you have a layer of a checkbox and you want another checkbox. So you just choose that checkbox and then you can duplicate that layer. Now I'm going to talk more about layers in the future videos on layers. But layers are your friends, and layers definitely make your life easier. Adjustments. So let's say you have an image and you want to make it brighter, or you want to make it black and white. You want to change the contrast. You want to change the curves. You want to change the hue and saturation. You want to invert the colors. You can change the levels. Levels often used if, let's say you take a picture of something and it's really dark, and you can use levels to brighten that photo up without just doing brightness and contrast. And you can posterize this and that. Those are just adjustments. Effects are stuff that you can do to your images as well. For example, let's say you have a picture and you want to convert that picture into an oil painting so that your picture looks like an oil painting. Or you want to turn that picture into a blur. And there's specific types of blurs, as you can see here. Or distort so this is just an effect. All this does is it converts your image into whatever you choose. Like red eye removal. If your picture has a lot of people with red eyes, back in the day when you take a picture, or even now, you have red eyes and you can remove that. So this gives you the ability to not only change your existing images, but also to tweak and edit and stylize and so forth your newer images. Utilities, that's just a section to manage your fonts, change the language, and so forth. So you're probably not going to use this section as much unless you check for updates for the program. The Windows section is actually what you see. These are windows. Like this is a window, this is a window, this is a window, this is a window. So let's say, for example, I want to, if I remove, accidentally click that. If I accidentally click the tools and I exit that, I'm like, oops, I want to get that back. Then you click on window, click on tools, and you see you can make it appear again. So if you lose that, don't worry. All you have to do is go under the tools section and then click on that. So as we can see right now, the tools, the history, the layers, the colors are all open. And you can do that too, but that's not necessary. Now, if you were using, of course, Adobe Photoshop and you clicked on Windows, you would see a large list of windows, like action scripts and this and that. But if you're trying to do the basic stuff, you're not really looking to, create a website and this and that, and just do basic graphic editing, this is pretty much what I use, and I've been doing graphic editing for a long time. But in terms of something quick and easy to do that does not cost any money, this is a great tool. And what I like most about it is it has layers. Now, let me go through each of these windows now that I've discussed to you basically this stuff here. This is the tools box, so you're going to use this tools box a lot. And if you've used even Paintbrush or even the basic paint, you know what these tools are all about. Well, with Paint.net, it actually goes beyond just basic tools. Like if I click on the rectangle here, you'll see these drop-down menus at the top. And if you click on that, you can see the list of tools, but you can also see like selection mode and this and that. So you have other abilities within that selection mode. So selection mode just means that you select something, kind of like what I did earlier. And then this here is just like a mouse cursor that allows you to drag and drop and move things around. And if you ever make a mistake, then you can click edit and undo. Or if you click Control Z, which is a shortcut I like to use, because let's say you make a bunch of mistakes and you want to go back. Another thing you can do is look at the history. For example, as you can see, watch carefully as I do stuff. As you can see, this is the history. So that means like if I want to go back all the way back to the original, I just click on this. But if I want to go back to a specific point, I can just click that and so forth. And what I like about this tool is let's say that I go back and I said, no, oops, I accidentally did the wrong thing. I actually want to go back forward. So I click on that. So I get back to my place. So that's what I like about Paint.net. It's pretty neat. So the history is a very useful tool if you make a mistake and if you want to revert back or forth, then that's the beauty of that. So that's that. The lasso tool basically allows you to, as you can see, draw around a shape, and we'll be using this to kind of remove a background and so forth. This tool is move selection, so it allows you to move things around and so forth. This tool here it's an ellipse, basically a circle, and you can select an area. So you can make a circle, you can make an oval, you can make an egg, and so forth. And if you want to move that selection around, you can move that with using this. Magic wand tool, if you're not familiar with the magic wand tool, we'll actually use that more when we actually create stuff. But the magic wand tool is a highly used tool. Let's say you want to select an area, like there's a person here and you want to select the background around them. The magic wand tool helps you to do that in combination with the lasso select tool. And this here allows you to pan back and forth. This of course allows you, it's the bucket, so as you can see you can change colors and so forth. Gradient basically allows you to create gradients. So you have solid colors and then you can have gradients here. So let's say for example I just wanted this piece over here. So I could take the lasso tool and just take that out here. I could do something like crop selection, and there we go. So that's a gradient tool. This is the paintbrush. This of course allows you to paint. And this of course allows you to erase. And of course you can increase the brush if you want to simply by going up here. So if you've noticed a pattern here, every time I choose an option, you want to look at the top here because there might be other options up here. This is the pencil tool, basically like the paintbrush, but it makes it thinner. This gives you the ability to pick colors on the page. So right now it's white, but let's say for example that I fill it in with this color and then I make this color into, let's see, yellow. And then if I were to use this color picker tool and it was that color and I wanted to make it this color, all I would have to do is click on it and then it would turn whatever I point my color picker to, it would turn that color into that color. So then I can use that color. This is the clone stamp. Basically just clones the areas. Recolor gives you the ability to recolor areas, but we won't use these tools as much. This is the text tool, of course, which gives you the ability to create text and so forth. This gives you the ability to create lines and curves. This gives you the ability to create rectangles. You can create bigger rectangles, smaller rectangles, and so forth. You can create the color of the rectangle, whether it's a filled shape, an outline, and so forth. And these right here are just a bunch of other shapes. So we talked about the history, we talked about the tools, we talked about colors indirectly by showing you how to use it, and layers, we'll talk more about layers later on. But as you can see here, this is one layer here. Layers will make your life a lot easier. So that's pretty much it. As you can see, it's very, very simple to use. So with that said, let's move on to video number 4. Hey, and welcome to video number 4. I'm going to show you how to create catchy text as well as creating that cool mirroring effect with your text. So I'm going to split this video up into 3 different steps. Step number 1, I'm going to show you how to create text. And then step number 2, I'm going to show you how to turn that text into a gradient. Gradient meaning if you look at, let's say, a text, it looks like this. Imagine this was one color, if it was blue. And you know how you have lighter shades of blue and darker shades of blue? Kind of like that shiny looking effect. So I'm going to show you how to do that in step number 2. And then step number 3, I'm going to show you how to do the mirroring effect. Kind of like what we talked about earlier. So I'm going to show you how to do that. But it's a step-by-step process so that you can learn, fairly easy from step number 1 to step number 3. And it'll be very easy for you to implement once you understand that. Step number 1 is, of course, to create a text. So I'm going to show you how to do that right now. All you have to do is click on the text here and then choose the color that you want to make. So in this case, I'm just going to keep it at, let's say, dark blue. And then I'm going to click somewhere, it doesn't matter where you click it. And then I'm just going to enter the text. Now, if you want to change the font, you can do so by clicking here. And as you can see, the beauty of Paint.net is it shows you what the font looks like. So you can pick and choose whatever font you want it to look like. So if I wanted to change from cursive to, let's say, this one here, I can do that. And then if you want to change the size, you just change the size here. And I'll just keep it at 192. If you want to bold it, you can. If you want to italicize it, underline it, put a strike through it, you can do that. If you want to move the text around, you will see this square box here with the arrows. Simply click on that and just move it around wherever you want it to be moved around. Alright. Now the second step is, of course, I'm going to show you how to create a gradient in terms of the text itself. Now I know I talked about that I'm going to use layers in the future videos, and I'm going to dive deeper into that later on, but I want to show you something cool. In order to create, mirroring effects and so forth and gradients, you're going to need to use layers. So to keep it simple, however, I'm just going to use one layer and that's it. So I'm going to start from scratch. Whenever you create a gradient or anything like that, then mirroring effects, you're going to need to create one layer. So all you have to do is click layer and click add new layer. And Paint.net is automatically going to give you a layer with no background. And that's what we want. So I'm going to uncheck this. All that means is that it makes it disappear just for the moment. And I'm going to click on the same text, click text, and add the text that I want to. And the next thing I'm going to do is use this magic wand tool. What this magic wand tool does is it allows you to select an area. So because we're dealing with text and we're not dealing with anything complicated, you don't have to worry about anything up here. So simply click on that and then hold the shift key. So you want to hold the shift key down and select that. And as we can see, it was selected all the way from here, here, and here. And normally you would hold the shift key and select these just inside the blue area or whatever color that you choose. Once that's done, you simply click on the gradient option here. There are different types of gradients. There are linear, reflected, diamond, and as you can see, you can get an idea of what it is. So I'm just going to choose linear, and what that means is now that we have this text selected, all you have to do is click anywhere you want, and as you can see, you're creating a gradient here. And if I hold the mouse and I put it down, as you can see here, you're creating a gradient more on a horizontal level. Now I can choose the color that I want to red if I want to, or pink or whatever. As long as you're using the color wheel here, that's fine. So that's how to create a gradient, and using this knowledge, you're going to be able to create the mirror effect. And I'm going to start from scratch, and the last step is to show you how to create the mirror effect. So I've started with a clean slate here, and I'm going to remove the background here. And you can use the background later if you want to, and I'll actually show you how to do that. In this case, you're creating two different layers. Imagine you're looking at a mirror and you see yourself, and if you're looking from a outside view, you see yourself in the mirror and you see yourself standing there. In this case, there are two different layers. It's just a duplicate layer of the first layer. So just keep that in mind. Using the information that I showed you earlier, you want to create a new layer, and then we'll just uncheck this. And actually, I'll leave that here just so you can see, what happens and so forth. So, of course, step number 1, click on the text tool, and then choose a color that you want. Now, the background, let's see here. I'm going to probably change the background color to something darker just so you can see the mirror effect. So, let's say that I'm going to choose dark blue. And then I want to change the color of the background. So as long as the background is checked, then and you click on it, then I'm editing the background. Now I want to fill this up, so I want to use the paint bucket tool and simply change the color, and that's it. Now I want to deal with the first layer, or the text layer. So I want to click on the text tool and make sure this is checked. And since it's dark blue, I want something lighter, let's say for example white. So I'm going to choose white here. Oops. And you can change the colors of the color wheel here. If you click on here, it'll change the color of that. If you click on here, it'll change the color of that. So that's just something to keep in mind. I'm going to move this to the side so that you can see this area here. Click on text, click here, and then add the text. And then, of course, move that to the location. Now, because we're dealing with a mirror effect, I'm going to make this a little smaller because there are going to be 2 layers involved. So I'm going to move this to the very top, and then that's all we've done. Now, remember how I talked about the mirror is like a second layer, but it's basically like a duplicate layer. So as long as this is checked, all you have to do is go to layers and click on duplicate layer. Duplicate layer, and then as we can see, if we click on the move tool here, you see that we've created 2 text. Alright. Now I want to flip that because it's a mirror effect, right? So to do that, all I have to do is make sure that I have that text selected. And anytime you move a layer, I'm not going to be able to move this layer unless I choose that layer, as you can see here. But I'm going to click on this, and then I'm going to flip that layer. So you can either flip it horizontally or flip it vertically. We want to flip it vertically so it looks like this. Aha! So you're kind of getting an idea here. So you can use the arrows on the keypad to do this. Alright, so you created a mirror effect. What now? Using the information that I showed you in step number 2 to create a gradient, you're basically going to turn this second layer into a gradient. To do that, like I showed you earlier, basically pick a color, any color that you want. I guess in this case we'll just pick, we'll stick with the dark blue. And then once you've picked a color, and if you're not familiar with what I just did, I basically clicked on the color picker to figure out what color was on the background. And then I'm going to click on the gradient tool. Oh, of course I've missed a step. Of course I need to select that layer. So make sure you select the right layer first. Once you select that layer, use the magic wand tool. and then hold the shift key, just as we did in step number 2. And then after that is selected and you see the outline selected, now it's time to use the gradient tool. Simply click, and then what I would do is just either push up. See, if you push down or you hold the mouse down, then it's not going to be like that mirror effect closest to the center. So let's say do that. And then you'll see this little circle thing. If I make this circle thing, as you can see, it gets darker. So just play around with that a little bit. And I'm almost done. The next thing I want to do is probably cut this in half. So what I mean by that is, okay, you're looking at this and you see the mirror effect here, but you really don't care about this stuff here. So what you can do is just highlight that and then delete it. Hit delete. And you can play around with it if you want to, change the gradient a little bit. Oops. Yeah, so don't forget to click the magic wand tool to select that layer. And that's it. That's how to create a mirror effect. You can play around with it a little bit more with the gradient tool to make it a little look better and so forth. Hey, and welcome to video number 5. We're going to talk about how to create catchy shapes that you can add to your designs. Creating shapes is very easy to do, and I do want to make a mention here that if you ever want to, refer to the layers video or refer to the plugins video in the future, this video series isn't really cumulative, so meaning that you can skip around if you want to. But keep in mind that when it comes to the banners and the headers, that's when it's actually cumulative. So we actually take everything that we've learned in the video product and use it for the banners and the header section. So I just want to make that clear before we move on, that you can move forward as well if you want to. Now we're going to create shapes in this specific video. So the best thing that you can do is either you can create squares, you can create all these other all these other things. But if you want to create like really cool shapes and effects, then you want to go under the effects section and then click on render. And you'll see a bunch of shapes that you can create and this and that. Now, when you start out with paint.net, you don't receive all of these. You might receive only a few, and that's fine. You can just use whatever you have. Or if you want a lot more, you can refer to the plugins section, plugins video section, which is video later on. And I basically show you where to get these effects, where to get these plugins. And essentially what plugins are they are effects. So you can find shapes and effects and so forth, and all you do is find them, download them, add them to paint.net, and it's very easy to do. But if you want to get more, I want to make a note and tell you that just refer to the plugin section if you want to do that. Now if you click on render, by default you're going to have shapes, and all you have to do is simply click on one of these, whatever you might have, because some of you might have something different, and you just click on shapes. And then in this case I can choose a shape. So what I like about paint.net is you can see what's happening in the preview section over here. So as you are creating shapes, you can see what's happening here. So I can click on square, I can click on circle, I can click on triangle, diamond, star. As you can see, we got many different types of cool looking shapes. So as you can see, they're not just circles and so forth. There's spiders and bats and butterflies and snowflake. Like for example, right now is winter time, so I could create something like this. I could change the line style so that either it's solid, it's a dash, it's dots, and so forth. You can make it flat. You can rotate it. You can do really cool, neat, cool stuff with this. So simply by using the effects, under render, and then you'll find a bunch of shapes that you can use. Now if you don't really care about getting all fancy, however, you can stick with the regular shapes. And with the regular shapes, you've got square rectangles, you got rounded rectangles, ellipses, and you have freeform shapes. So freeform shapes would give the ability to kind of create your own shapes. But it would kind of require you to, it's kind of like the pencil or the paintbrush. But as you saw earlier, eventually it connects to each other. So if I want to make a vase, I could do that, but obviously it doesn't look like a vase at all. So I would say stick with, if you're not familiar with that, just stick with these shapes here. And if you want to get fancy, say we'll make a square. Put a square with text in it. You can actually apply effects to the specific shape as well, just by going under effects and then applying certain things to that shape. So you can do things like that. And the whole idea here is you can create shapes, but to make that shape fancy or anything, click under effects, go to render or distort, anything you want. And like I said earlier, if you want extra effects or extra shapes, just refer to the plugin section, and that'll show you how to get shapes, how to get effects, and so forth. But it'll show you how to get effects, but you can apply that to getting shapes as well. So as you can see, it's a very easy thing to do. You can create this. You can change the stuff inside the shape. So just now what I did was I took the paint bucket, filled this in. You can change the fill, and what fill means is whatever it fills up in. So you can change that. Fill that in, and it's checkerboard and this and that. So, and like I said earlier, it really depends on what you're creating. If you're creating something professional, you would probably want to keep with something conservative. If you're creating something wacky for a wacky audience, or not necessarily a wacky audience, but something that's more artistic, then you can fill in stuff like this. But just keep in mind your audience and who you're dealing with whenever you're creating graphics, so that you can create something that is eye-friendly to that specific audience. Hey, and welcome to video number 5. We're going to talk about how to create catchy shapes that you can add to your designs. Creating shapes is very easy to do, and I do want to make a mention here that if you ever want to, refer to the layers video or refer to the plugins video in the future, this video series isn't really cumulative, so meaning that you can skip around if you want to. But keep in mind that when it comes to the banners and the headers, that's when it's actually cumulative. So we actually take everything that we've learned in the video product and use it for the banners and the headers section. So I just want to make that clear before we move on, that you can move forward as well if you want to. Now we're going to create shapes in this specific video. So the best thing that you can do is either you can create squares, you can create all these other things, but if you want to create like really cool shapes and effects, then you want to go under the effects section and then click on render, and you'll see a bunch of shapes that you can create and this and that. Now when you start out with paint.net, you don't receive all of these. You might receive only a few, and that's fine. You can just use whatever you have, or if you want a lot more, you can refer to the plugins section, plugins video section, which is video later on. And I basically show you where to get these effects, where to get these plugins, and essentially what plugins are they are effects. So you can find shapes and effects and so forth, and all you do is find them, download them, add them to paint.net, and it's very easy to do. But if you want to get more, I want to make a note and tell you that just refer to the plugin section if you want to do that. Now if you click on render, by default you're going to have shapes, and all you have to do is simply click on one of these, whatever you might have, because some of you might have something different, and you just click on shapes, and then in this case I can choose a shape. So what I like about paint.net is you can see what's happening in the preview section over here. So as you are creating shapes, you can see what's happening here. So I can click on square, I can click on circle, I can click on triangle, diamond, star. As you can see, we got many different types of cool looking shapes. So as you can see, they're not just circles and so forth. There's spiders and bats and butterflies and snowflake. Like for example, right now is winter time, so I could create something like this. I could change the line style so that either it's solid, it's a dash, it's dots, and so forth. You can make it flat. You can rotate it. You can do really cool, neat, cool stuff with this. So simply by using the effects, under render, and then you'll find a bunch of shapes that you can use. Now if you don't really care about getting all fancy, however, you can stick with the regular shapes. And with the regular shapes, you've got square rectangles, you got rounded rectangles, ellipses, and you have freeform shapes. So freeform shapes would give the ability to kind of create your own shapes, but it would kind of require you to, it's kind of like the pencil or the paintbrush, but as you saw earlier, eventually it connects to each other. So if I want to make a vase, I could do that, but obviously it doesn't look like a vase at all. So I would say stick with, if you're not familiar with that, just stick with these shapes here. And if you want to get fancy, say we'll make a square. Put a square with text in it. You can actually apply effects to the specific shape as well, just by going under effects and then applying certain things to that shape. So you can do things like that. And the whole idea here is you can create shapes, but to make that shape fancy or anything, click under effects, go to render or distort, anything you want. And like I said earlier, if you want extra effects or extra shapes, just refer to the plugin section, and that'll show you how to get shapes, how to get effects, and so forth. But it'll show you how to get effects, but you can apply that to getting shapes as well. So as you can see, it's a very, very easy thing to do. You can create this. You can change the stuff inside the shape. So just now what I did was I took the paint bucket, filled this in. You can change the fill, and what fill means is whatever it fills up in. So you can change that. Fill that in, and it's checkerboard and this and that. So, and like I said earlier, it really depends on what you're creating. If you're creating something professional, you would probably want to keep with something conservative. If you're creating something wacky for a wacky audience, or not necessarily a wacky audience, but something that's more artistic, then you can fill in stuff like this. But just keep in mind your audience and who you're dealing with whenever you're creating graphics, so that you can create something that is eye-friendly to that specific audience. Hey, and welcome to video number 6. We're going to talk about how to remove the background of a picture. So let's say, for example, that you have an object from a picture that you want that object, and you want to remove that object and add it to a different picture. Well, we're going to show you how to do that quickly and easily. So the first thing that you need to do is to find a picture that you want to take the object out of the background. In this specific video, I'm going to show you 2 different examples. And before I go there, I want to say that anytime that you have a solid background, like a white background or a black background or anything like that, it's going to be a lot easier. So the first example I'm going to do is one of these where there's a solid background. The second example that I will do is going to be a background that is a little more complicated. It's not exactly a solid background. For example, this photo here, let's say I want to take the business people out and remove the clouds. I'll show you that in the second part of this specific video, just so that you can get an idea of how all of this works. So I'm going to pick a picture. I'm going to pick this picture, and to open it in Paint.net is very easy. Once you've found that picture, all you have to do is left click, drag it over, click open, and there we go. So let's say I want to remove this white animated or white 3D fellow with his books. And I'm going to remove everything, including this mirrored effect right here. So to do it, what you need to do is click on the magic wand. The magic wand is your friend in terms of selecting, the background here. So click on the magic wand, and then up at the top, you're going to see something called tolerance. And I'm just going to show you an example. If the tolerance is too high, that means that this magic wand is not going to be able to detect the difference between this white and this semi-white. So if the tolerance is too high and I click on it, you'll notice that it selects everything. You see? What I like to do is usually pick a tolerance that's low. So I want to pick something maybe like 13. So if I click it again, you'll see that it actually selects everything around this person minus this part. So maybe I'll do it again, and I'll choose 18, and I'll click it again here. But now you see it selects more, but then it cuts into his head. So I might need to decrease that a little bit and click again. Now, because that's the case, I'm just going to have to work with this. Now, the blue area here is where it has selected it. Once it has selected the area or the background, what you need to do is just click on delete. And what that does is, as you can see, it has removed the background. And all I need to do is just go around, click here. Let's see if this works. Okay. As long as it does not run into its foot or into the object itself, then that's a good thing. Okay, good. I'm going to click here. And maybe I'll click here. Click delete. Okay, good. Click here, delete. So your goal is just to click and then delete, as long as it doesn't run into the foot itself or into the object itself. And it's not going to be perfect. I'm going to show you how to get it deeper. So as you can see, I'm really just getting pieces and bits and pieces of it. Now, because the tolerance is a little lower, I'm going to increase it a little bit, just see what happens. Okay. So you're just going to have to tweak the tolerance a little bit. So just remove as much as you can with the magic wand. Oops, no, I don't want to do that. Once you have done all that you can, now it's time to zoom in. So I would click on this here and I would zoom in. If you click on view and you click on zoom in, it's Control++. So I'm going to use Control++ or Control+. And then I'm going to have to navigate around this picture. Now, what I want you to do is look carefully for anything that is attached to it. And what I mean by that is like stuff like this. And the only way you're going to be able to see that is if you zoom in. So you can see all this. So all of this stuff needs to be removed. And I found the best thing to do is to either use the eraser and just, click. And sometimes you might need to zoom in, closer. Now you may not need to have a perfect job. However, you want to do the best that you can. So you can use the eraser tool. You could even use the lasso tool if you want to. The lasso tool requires you to use your mouse though, so it's a little more tedious. See? So let's see here. Start here. So I'm going to pause it in a minute, and basically what I'm going to do is just go around the whole thing and just do this the whole time. Okay, so I went through it and I basically removed as much as possible. As we saw earlier, it pretty much removed everything on the top, and then we had to just use the eraser. Just go through and just to delete every little tiny spot. And I missed a spot there. And just tweak around it, tweak this, play around with this. and eventually you'll get the hang of it. So I'm going to zoom back out. I'm going to click on view, click on actual size, and as you can see, if we click this tool, I'm going to zoom out. If all has worked, then if I click on this person, I can move him around, as you can see here. So there you go. I've pretty much removed him from the background, and I'm not going to save it yet. I'm going to save, and actually save as, more likely. Just call them test.jpg. And then when you save it, I usually save the quality as maximum. And then let me just show you something that's really neat. Once you add a layer, let's say for example, and I'm going to add a layer and just add a background to him. So by doing this, you can get an idea of where I kind of missed out, there. But that's just easy. In this case, all I have to do is just remove that, and I can do that using rectangle selects and so forth. So adding a layer, and I'll talk more about layers, but adding a layer and then adding a black layer behind it gives you the ability to kind of see which parts that you missed out on. Like right here, I missed out on that part. And all I'm doing is selecting and deleting. Selecting and then deleting. Selecting and deleting. And that's it. So there you have it. I've successfully grabbed this object out of the background, and I can add it to any background that I want to. And it's simply, as long as the layer is at the top, then that'll work itself out. In the next example, I'm going to basically go through and pick a harder example. I said I would pick and choose this one. This one's not too bad. Now that I look at it, it's got clouds, but remember how I said earlier, it really depends on how close the object is to. If the object is close to a solid color, then it's going to be easier. So let's take what we learned. Click on the magic wand tool. Make sure your tolerance is low. The lower the better, actually. And then you can tweak with it and just play with it, see how that goes. See, the tolerance is too high, it goes into their shirts. So it looks like I'm just going to have to zoom in and then go through and delete. Let's see. Like this woman's shirt is too white, so it blends in. Let's see here. It's too white. Still too high. So as you're watching me, I'm just tweaking the tolerance. So once I found a suitable area, then I can delete that. As you can see, I'm really going after the background that's close to the person. It may not be the perfect the first time, but and from that point, of course, just doing the background is easy. I'm just selecting, delete, selecting, delete, selecting, delete. Alright, so now I'm going to have to zoom in. And this process will take a little more time just because. And what I like to do is, of course, if you can remove everything close to the object itself, then of course everything is easy. And then I'll do this. Click here. And then for the bigger areas, you know, you can just use squares. Go back to actual size. Let's say, for example, here. I can select all of this. Pretty much to the guy's head, I can select. And then from that point, I select this. Select this. This. So you pretty much get the point. And then I find the easiest is once you've done that, then create another layer, add a layer, and turn that layer black. And then make sure the layer is at the bottom. And by doing so, as you can see here, you see the areas that you've missed. So once you've gotten the big spaces first, then you can dive into the smaller pieces, smaller areas around the people. And that's it. That's pretty much how everything works. You can continue to do so to remove everything. But as you can see, it's not a hard process. It just takes time. And as long as you remove the background closest to the object, removing everything else should be fairly easy to do. And don't forget to save it when you're done. Hey, and welcome to video number 7. We're going to talk about layers. Layers make your life easier as a person who is editing graphics. So graphic designers love layers just because with layers you can move objects around, you can move objects behind an object, in front of an object, and you can just do a lot of stuff much easier. So in the previous videos I talked about the basics of, adding one layer and this and that, but now I want to show you the full potential of layers. So under the section we have layers. You can add a layer, you can delete a layer, you can duplicate a layer, you can merge a layer down, you can import a layer from a file. Say you want to move this layer to a different file, you can do that, and you can do other things like that. Now I'm actually going to walk you through step by step on exactly what do all of these mean. So what I want to do is I'm going to use this previous example where we remove this object or this little fellow here with his books from the background, and I want to place him on a different background. Now of course add a new layer. Basically, like I kind of mentioned earlier, layers are basically layers. So imagine you have 10 sheets of transparent plastic sheets, and on each of those sheets you have text, you have images, you have so forth. So with that you can move it, you can put it in order, you can put one in front of the other and so forth. For example, if I were to put this background or this layer, this black layer above, what that means is whatever is on the top is on the top. Whatever is at the bottom is the bottom. So if I were to move this to the top, and then of course you have a black sheet layer on top of this person here. Now Paint.net does give you the ability to unselect layers. For example, let's say I create a layer, but I don't want to see that layer at the moment. Then I can uncheck this box. And then of course I can move him back down here. And if I want to flatten the image or merge these two layers together, this is what this link is. It merges the layer down. So if I were to merge the layer down here, that becomes one layer. But I don't want to do that, so I'm going to click on to go back with the history here. This duplicates a layer. Basically that means that, let's say I want two guys. So all I have to do is make sure that I select the layer that I want to duplicate of, click on duplicate, and as you can see here I've got, two layers. So the only time you would want to use this is, of course, if in your graphic design you want to use two of them. So as you can see, I've got two guys here. So let's say, for example, that I want to move this guy over. What I can do is click at this here and then click back here, and I can move him back and forth. So I could move him over here, and then I could move his little friend here. Select that here. And I found if you're messing with layers, you might want to use the selection tool and just click there and do that. And of course, if you ever make any mistakes, you can always go back to here. Now, if you want to import a layer from a file, you can do that. Let's say, for example, I'm going to just save this file. And then, let's see, you want to make sure that you know where that file is located. And then let's say that I'm going to create a brand new photo, and let's say that I'm going to make it 1000. So that's what that layer looks like. I'm going to zoom out. And let's say that I want to take that layer of that little guy and just plop him in here. What I could do is go to layers, import from file, and find that layer. And it's test.pdn. And what that does is it just imports all of those layers into that file. So let's say, for example, that I am creating a header, and I'm actually going to use this in the header example. Let's say I want to import him into the header. I can do that. And then the layers that I do not want, I can simply select and delete them, or just uncheck them as well. And of course, you can mess around with the layer itself. You can resize the layer. And if you want to keep, let's say, for example, what maintain aspect ratio means is, let's say I resize it to 500. If you notice carefully, this did not change, which just means that this is going to squeeze in. It's not going to look right. So I'm going to go back to the original number and click on maintain aspect ratio, which basically means that if I change this, this number will change as well. So that resizes it, but I don't want to resize it, so I'm just going to leave it as is. And you can also import other images as well. Let's say I want to add a layer, and I'm going to add this layer here, and this layer will be an image. So what I like to do is simply find a picture. Let's see here. say that we're going to add him to this domino piece. And whenever you drag a new picture in and you're working with layers, add it as a layer. Don't just open the file. So you need to add it as a layer. So you just need to get used to layers and working with layers. Now, as you can see here, this layer is on top of the other layers. And what I want to do is simply push this layer down until this little guy is on the top. And remember to select the selection box and then go back here, and then you can move them around. So one thing I could do is I could even tweak it so that it looks like he's tipping over these dominoes. And to do that, as long as your layer is selected, then I can go in, let's see, I can zoom in, and then I can basically just select the books. So I'm going to just, as normal, I'm just going to select the books. And you know, because only I'm selecting this layer itself, it's not going to affect the other layers. So if I press delete, you'll notice that everything is being deleted except not part of that picture is being deleted. And as you can see here, that's the way to go. And I'm just going to have to go inside and do some tweaks and, you know, delete those things around his hand. But if I go zoom back out, actual size, zoom out. As you can see, I've pretty much manipulated the photo so it looks like he is pushing over the dominoes pieces. See how neat that is? And that was because the beauty of layers, that made my life a lot easier. Now, a good practice to do is once you're done with a photo is to only keep the layers that are part of that picture. So I did not use this layer, so I'm going to delete it just to keep everything clean. And then, let's see, I'm just going to leave that as is. And I could add another layer for text and so forth. So the whole idea here is to use layers as much as possible and make it nice and neat so that you only are using layers that you want to be using. So let's say, for example, that I want to remove the background on all those layers and just place this little guy with the dominoes on a different background. To do that, simply watch the video before, and it's really easy just to use this magic wand tool, you know, and go through the process of doing that. So that's the video on layers. One last thing I want to say about layers in Paint.net is if you click on layers and click on layer properties, and depending on the layer that you choose, that specific layer you can turn the opacity up, which basically makes it like this so that there's no background here. And I could do the same thing. Press OK. I click on this layer properties, and then do that too. And I can play around with the magic wand hand, and that's it. So that's how to use layers, and as you can see, it's very, very easy to use. In the next video, I'm going to talk about plugins, and then the video after that, I'm going to talk about headers and banners, and how you can perhaps even take this photo here and make a header and a banner out of that by using the technique of layers. Hey, and welcome to video number 8. We're going to talk about plugins. You don't necessarily need to use plugins, but if you've used Paint.net and you want to expand, you want to use different effects and this and that, then plugins would be right for you. So if that's the case, then go ahead and watch this video. Plugins definitely will make the software a lot more powerful if you choose to go beyond the basic fundamentals. So plugins are basically like effects. So once I install a plugin, it'll appear under the effects section here. So step number 1 is, of course, to go to google.com and to find a plugin that you want. So go to Google, type in Paint.net plugins, and you will be met with a bunch of forums. What I like to do is I just go straight to the Get Paint.net forum. I don't really go with there are a lot of other third-party sites, and you can do that too. However, you do keep in mind that make sure you have, antivirus software on your computer and so forth. So what I normally do is, of course, go to the forums.getpaint.net under their plugin forum. Now, that's not to say that, anywhere you download any file, you need to be protected. So you can go through, you can figure out what plugin, what effect does what. And as you can see here, you have a list. You can kind of get an idea of what is in each plugin folder. For example, if I click on Magic's All Plugins, it says here it is 60 plugins in one pack. And let's say that I go through and it's color zoom, blur, gradient blur. And you're not going to need every single one of these. What I recommend doing is just picking out 1 or 2 that you want and then grabbing those. So let's say, for example, that I want to choose this plugin pack. Now there's 60 of them, of course. So you want to go ahead and download it. So I'm going to download it, unzip it, and then find the plugin files, which, as you can see, is located here. So we've got 60 plugins here. And this is how to install it. So step number 1, find the plugin that you want. Step number 2, download it and unzip it. Step number 3 is the installation part, which is very, very easy. What I recommend you doing is to open up a new window, go to the C drive, go to the program files folder, and then go to the Paint.net folder, and then under the effects folder is where you want to install these files. And install, what I mean by install is simply select the effects that you want, simply drag and drop it over to this folder, and once that is done, all you have to do is open up Paint.net. Now Paint.net on this computer is already open, so what I want to do is, of course, save my files and then close it down. So essentially you want to reboot Paint.net. And then I'm going to open up Paint.net, and if all works, you should be able to see it under the effects section. So this was rebooted, and then if I go into the effects section, the beauty of the plugins is it knows which section it belongs to. So as you can see, autochroma was added, blurs. I got a bunch of new blurs. I got a bunch of new distorted stuff. I can do kaleidoscope. I can do a lot of stuff. Now, a lot of this stuff, if you're using this video training course for business, and of course you want to stick with something that is conservative and professional. So that's the beauty of the plugins, is you can install tons and tons of plugins, but just keep in mind that you probably want to stick with stuff that you would actually use. So as you can see, it's very easy. You can, let's say we'll open up a image We'll just open this image here and then apply an effect to it. Let's just do something like frosted glass or something. And what I like about the effects is as you change stuff, you can actually see what's happening. So I can make the smoothness better. Let's see. Once they're done, press OK, and then it applies it. So that's how to use plugins, and as you can see, over time as you add plugins, you can find a lot of plugins. And this was just one guy's plugins, and he had 60 plugins. And as you can see within this forum here, there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of plugins to scour through. But I do recommend that you stay focused and that you don't get sidetracked and just start downloading tons and tons of plugins, because if you do that, eventually you're just going to overwhelm yourself and you're not going to be able to complete the task ahead. So as you can see, very, very easy to do. And in the next video, I'm going to show you how to create banners and headers, pretty much using everything that I've taught you thus far. Congratulations, you have made it to the end of the video series. In this specific last video, number 9 video, we're going to talk about banners and headers. So you've learned how to create catchy text, catchy shapes, you've learned layers, you've learned how to, remove a object or anything else from a background. Let's take all of that and let's create a banner and let's create a header. Banner, header could be the same thing. It just uses the same concept, so we're just going to create one of those. So you're going to take pretty much everything that you have learned to create a header and a banner. So what I'm going to do, what I did was I found a bunch of these banners here, and we're going to try to create something like this. So the first thing you need to do is, of course, to create a new image. And instead of the regular 800 by 600, I'm going to uncheck this and create the width to be, let's say, we'll just say 800, or we'll say 800 by 350. And I kind of want to, I'm going to change that. I'm going to resize that to be about 950 and then by 250 because I want it to be wider. Alright, so I'm going to move these to the side. So the most important ones would be the layer and the tools. Okay, so learning what I taught you previously, we're going to use text, we're going to kind of create some shapes, and so as we can see here, you've got a background, you've got some text, you have some jagged lines to create some shapes, kind of like call outs, and then you have a picture. So normally with banners you have one picture or maximum 2 pictures and then text and some shapes that surround that. So the first thing we want to have is a background and a picture. So what I'm going to do is just go ahead and open up the picture that we removed from the background with a little 3D little guy connected to his books. So I'm going to use this here. Oops. And we just want to import him as a layer. So I click on layer, I'm going to import from file, and then I'm going to find that file, which is test.pdn, and click on open and import that layer. Now I don't really care much about the black background, so I'm going to uncheck that. And in fact, I'm going to delete that background. And I'm going to zoom out. And I kind of want to resize this photo. So I'm just going to make it smaller as such. And I want the background, of course, to be resized. I don't know why it changed that, but I want to change it back to 950 by 250. So we have that. And then, as you can see, like I'm doing right now, if you grab one of these corners, you can resize it yourself. And just do that. Now, with the background, I might want to change the background a little bit. So, for example, okay, when we look over here, you don't really see a really solid background. You kind of see a background with kind of shapes on it or some sort of gradient. So what I'm going to do is, let's say that I want to make the background. Let's change the background a little bit. So let's change the background in this case to be, let's see here. Let's just make sure that everything is white right now. And I'm just trying to cover all this stuff with white in the background. Okay. So I've got a white background, playing with a white background, and let's say that I want to, I'll just make this guy disappear because I'm dealing with the background right now. So the first thing we want to do is deal with the background. And the question is, do you want the background to change where the little guy is standing? We notice here that we have images, and let's see. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a shape. First, I'm going to create a shape, and I'm going to make that background change. So when doing that, you want to use layers. So I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to add a new layer, and with this layer I'm going to create a shape. So kind of like as you see here, like don't miss the chance. They've got a shape here, and then they fill that shape with a different color, and the rest of the color we have a different, background color. So I'm going to create a shape. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an ellipse, like I need to make that black just so I can see what it looks like. And then maybe I'm going to do something like that where I've got an ellipse, and I'm going to fill that ellipse with a solid color. So I kind of want to redo that. I'm going to change my brush width to about that color. So I'm just going to do that. And I think I want to move this a little closer. Okay, yeah, I'm going to move that here. And after that, I want to maybe turn that shape into, let's say that we're going to make it like a blue, like a light blue. So once I've found a color that I want to use, I'm going to use that, and then I'm going to fill this shape with this color. And then as you can see here, I'm dealing with 3 different layers. I'm dealing with this layer, which is the shape, and then I'm dealing with the background. So now I want to change the background to something like red or something. So let's choose red, but I want a dark red. I don't want a, you know, like a, not too dark, but so once you find that red that you want, let's say that I'm going to use this so that I can kind of get a darker red to it. So I want a dark red, but I don't want it too dark. Alright, so I want that color. So I'm going to take this and dump it in here. And there's a red line there, so I'm going to select it and crop it. Alright, so that disappears. I'm going to make that little guy reappear by selecting the layer here. Aha, okay, good. Alright, good. So I have that done there, and then let's say that I want to change the background because I'm selecting this red area, so I want to use some sort of effect to create something like a different texture or add noise, or let's see here, add noise, add color, add blur. Maybe I want to do some sort of blur, but not too much of a blur. So I might do a motion blur, but not too much. Let's see. I'm not trying to make anything too wacky. If I change the texture to look like this, it's going to look too wacky, and I don't want it to look too wacky because you want to try to keep with something simple. So maybe I'll add some noise, not too much noise. So I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to add some text. Let's say that I'm selling books. Let's see here. And since I'm on a red background, and so I've used something, remove backgrounds, we're using layers, we created shapes. Now we're going to add text. So I don't have my color wheel, so I'm going to go to window and click on colors so I can see my color wheel. Click on less and make sure that I choose white, because use that, and then I'm going to add some text. I don't want it to be too big. I'm going to make it size 26, and then I'm going to say 20% off all books. And then 4 days only. And I want to center that. I want to make this a little bigger. not too big. And I can change the font. You don't want to get too fancy with your font when you're creating headers. So something sans serif. Something somebody can see that's easy, quick and easy to see. So we could use something like that. And there we go. It's not too fancy, but as you can see, that's pretty easy to create banner ads. So I'm going to move this to the side so that you can see the end results. And we've basically taken this little guy from the background, plopped him on there, added a shape, made that shape a color, so it's a layer on top of the red layer background, and we created a textual layer as well right there. And if you want to change the text, you can always do that. But just keep in mind, the goal is to create layers. The more layers you create, the better and easier it's going to be to edit. So let's say you put this layer on top of all these layers. And when you go back to changing it, it's going to be a problem. So make sure you use those layers, because layers are your friends. And that's it. You can use the same concept to create headers of any size or banners of any size. As long as you keep with the concept that you use at least one or two images, one text, a different shape, and a background, you're pretty much good to go.